18. Disgruntled customer clocks counterworker. While many Americans found themselves out of work or stuck at home during the start of the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, Samantha Clark was one of the so-called essential workers who were required to continue at their job. She was working at a Big Five sporting goods store in Modesto one day when a woman called in to ask the staff to hold a swimming pool for her. The person who handled the call told the woman that the store would hold the pool, but they could only do it for a half hour. When the woman failed to show up within the allotted window of time, an employee put the pool back on the shelf and someone else purchased it. When the caller showed up just 15 minutes later, Samantha understood why she was upset that the pool was no longer available. But she was less sympathetic to the woman's decision to start picking things off the counter and throwing them around. Before nonchalantly leaving the store, the angry customer allegedly hit Samantha in the face with a metal object, leaving her with a bleeding injury. Samantha told ABC 10 that she didn't even see the attack coming. She didn't even have enough time to try shielding her face when the woman suddenly hit her out of nowhere. In her 17 years working at the store, it was the first time a customer physically attacked her. But the incident happened on the heels of a noticeable increase in disrespectful treatment from customers. According to Samantha, who said that the rudeness became more and more noticeable after the store implemented social distancing and mask requirements. Police officers released a photo of the suspect, but it's unclear whether the woman was identified or arrested. In the meantime, Samantha created a Facebook page called Retail Life During COVID-19, which quickly got tens of thousands of followers. While the page served as a platform for retail workers to vent, Samantha also called on the public to show kindness and patience toward customer service employees. After all, it's really not that much to ask. 17. Natalia Harrell. In July 2022, during a night out partying in Miami, a man asked his female friends if they knew any more women who might want to join them for some fun. Some of the group members showed the man a social media account belonging to a 28-year-old Uber driver named Gladys Yvette Borsella. He apparently took a liking to her photo, and Borsella soon joined the festivities. But not everyone seemed happy about her being there. At some point during the night, 24-year-old Natalia Harrell became annoyed by Borsella's dancing and alcohol-induced behavior. Shortly after 2 o'clock in the morning, the two women and 5 others got into an Uber. During the ride, Borsella and Harrell started arguing, and what began as a simple exchange of words soon escalated into a physical fight. According to a police report, Harrell issued an ominous warning to Borsella, saying, "You don't want this. You don't want me to go into my purse." Then, at some point, she did exactly that. Harrell is accused of pulling a gun out and firing a shot at Borsella, who passed away from her injuries. Disturbing dashcam footage showed Harrell climbing from the back of the Uber into the middle row, as the driver anxiously watched the situation unfold in the rearview mirror. Shortly after Harrell switched seats, Borsella was hit in the stomach. The Uber driver stopped the car, and everyone but Borsella immediately got out and ran. Harrell, who happened to be pregnant at the time of the shooting, is facing a second-degree murder charge. In early 2023, her attorneys tried convincing a judge to release her from jail while the case worked its way through the court system, arguing that her unborn child didn't deserve to be punished, since they had not committed a crime. The judge denied the motion for bond, and Harrell is still currently behind bars pending the outcome of her case. 16. Daniel Willis Taylor. Almost any fast food customer can remember a time when something was missing from their order. Whether it be a small sauce packet, a fork, or even an entire sandwich. It's frustrating, but most people don't lose their heads over it. The same cannot be said for a homeless boxer named Daniel Willis Taylor, who was accused of assaulting a female McDonald's worker in Pinellas County, Florida, on New Year's Eve 2018, when he didn't have a straw in his bag. Surveillance and cell phone video of the incident showed Taylor grabbing a 20-year-old worker named Yasmin James by the collar in a fit of rage. He could be seen pulling the young woman across the counter while she pulled back. and hit him multiple times while screaming angrily at him. A coworker quickly intervened and eventually managed to separate Yasmin from the attacker. At that point, a manager came over to see what was happening. In footage of the incident, Taylor was heard demanding that Yasmin get fired, claiming that he was simply trying to ask a question. The young woman shouted back, "No, you're going to jail." Yasmin didn't lose her job, thankfully, and it quickly became apparent to the manager that Taylor was the attacker in the situation. While being escorted out of the restaurant, he allegedly kicked another staff member on the way. Authorities charged Taylor with 2 counts of simple battery. He pleaded guilty to both charges, and the judge sentenced him to 60 days in jail, with credit for 58 days served as he sat in holding waiting for the outcome of the case. Taylor was also ordered to either pay a $1,000 fine or complete 120 hours of community service. 15. Elena Jenkins. Most people would agree that COVID-19 mask requirements brought out some of the worst behavior imaginable in people. This was definitely the case when a woman lashed out at a McDonald's worker in San Jose, California back in 2021 after they asked her to leave for not wearing a mask. Instead of following the order to leave, a 40-year-old transient named Elena Jenkins allegedly refused to get out of the restaurant and started hurling racial slurs at the worker while telling them to call the police. When it became clear the customer had no plans to listen rationally, the manager intervened and asked her to leave the building. But Jenkins continued to hurl racial insults, according to the Santa Clara County District Attorney's Office. The suspect was charged with 1 misdemeanor count each of battery and a hate crime. It's unclear where the case is currently standing. 14. Jeffrey Hernandez. Things quickly went from 0 to 100 in 2 seconds flat. At an auto parts store in Stillwater, Oklahoma one day in May 2023, when a customer accused employees of damaging his car's battery. According to police, 41-year-old Jeffrey Hernandez threatened to cut a worker's throat during a temper outburst over the supposed botched repair job. Court documents claim the situation only escalated after officers arrived. Based on the nature of the threats Hernandez was accused of making, law enforcement planned from the beginning to take him into custody while they investigated. But doing so proved easier said than done. Records state that Hernandez refused to listen to the cops' commands and started swinging at the officers. Police were initially unable to get him under control, giving the suspect an opportunity to run into the business's warehouse, where he threw a car full of items at an officer. Even after the responding cops had Hernandez surrounded, he continued his reckless and irrational behavior. According to an arrest report, the suspect lowered his head and charged toward the police, who finally subdued him with the help of a taser. In his possession, officers found a pocket knife and a backpack with a fully loaded semi-automatic handgun inside, along with a magazine holding 12 additional rounds of ammunition. After doing everything in his power to avoid being taken into custody, Hernandez was arrested and charged with 2 felony counts, 1 for assault and battery on a police officer, and 1 for assault with a dangerous weapon. If convicted of both counts, he could face 15 years in prison. Lieutenant T.J. Lowe told local news station KOCO that the store's workers made the right choice to call the police because, in his words, the suspect had every intention of harming somebody. 13. MD Joe Bull Hussein. If you've ever gone to a business right after closing, then you know from experience how frustrating it is when you can't get what you came for, especially if an employee is still inside. Most people in this situation would accept that they should have left for the store earlier and simply leave disappointed. But one man from Warren, Michigan was unwilling to take no for an answer. After he arrived at a fish market 13 minutes after closing one night in April 2023. According to the Macomb County Prosecutor's Office, 60-year-old MD Joe Bull Hussein became angry and argumentative when a worker told him the market had closed due to the Ramadan holiday. When things continued not going his way, Hussein allegedly picked up a 4-pound, or 1.8 kilogram, frozen Hilsa fish and hit the clerk in the head with it. The employee was later taken to the hospital while authorities arrested Hussein on a misdemeanor aggravated assault charge. If convicted, he could face up to a year in jail behind bars. In a statement detailing the incident, Macomb County Prosecutor Peter Lucido said, "I never thought I'd have to say this, but if you assault someone with a fish in our county, you will be prosecuted." He also added that a frozen fish is a dangerous object when it's used to hit someone in the head. 12. Rita Bellu. In one of the most cringeworthy viral Karen moments in all of 2023, a white woman launched into a racist tantrum toward workers at a Philadelphia restaurant when she lost her cool over a TV show that was playing in Spanish. Video footage of the confrontation at Amy's Family Pizzeria, which originally appeared on TikTok, showed the woman describing her family's alleged history in the United States before hurling insults and threats at Omar Quinones, one of the business's owners. She was heard saying, "You're not American, dude. I will look you the F up and get you the F out of our town," implying that she was going to somehow have him deported. The hateful customer, later identified as 55-year-old Rita Francis Bellu, also called Quinones an ignoramus and accused him of not having any respect for her, all because a TV show was playing in Spanish in the background. And it didn't just end there. The suspect was so irrationally upset that once she finished throwing her tantrum like a 2-year-old, she demanded a refund for her food. As you can imagine, she didn't ask politely for her money back, but instead said, "I'm not going to give my money to some illegal immigrant." Her voice was seeped with disgust as she added, "You're in America. You're supposed to learn English." In the video, Bellu can be heard telling Quinones that she was going to carefully count out the money he gave her, indicating that she thought he wasn't trustworthy. She then started arguing with the bystander who was recording the disturbing incident. The footage ended right as an officer came inside the restaurant in response to a call about the situation. According to a criminal complaint, Quinones explained the situation and said that Bellu refused to take any money he tried to give her. He instead gave the money to the cop, who then gave it to Bellu and told her she wasn't welcome in the restaurant. The complaint states that Bellu responded by shrugging and saying, I'm white, and I'm racist," as if to suggest that her being white was the reason she was accused of being a bigot. Speaking with the Philadelphia Inquirer, Hatboro Police Chief James Gardner said that he didn't think of the incident as a hate crime at first, but as a simple disagreement between a customer and a business owner. But he changed his mind after seeing the video for himself, which he described as over the top and racially fueled. Bellu was charged with misdemeanor harassment and ethnic intimidation after what she did. She was quick to publicly apologize for her alleged actions once the video was released, but she seemed to realize that the damage was done and kept it short, telling the Inquirer that she was ashamed of her behavior. She also added that she didn't want to make excuses and that she was deeply sorry. The judge has ordered the case to go to trial. Bellu's words towards Quinones were extremely harsh and full of hate. Just days later, she insisted that she was sorry. 11. Robert Goldwitzer Jr. After discovering that a McDonald's employee forgot to give him sauce with his chicken nuggets one day in 2021, a frustrated customer allegedly threatened to damage the restaurant in Ankeny, Iowa. According to police, the disgruntled man called the McDonald's to complain about his missing sauce early that evening. During the conversation, he allegedly threatened to punch a worker and blow the restaurant up. Staff members filed an official complaint, and police didn't have to look hard to track down the suspect, 42-year-old Robert Goldwitzer Jr., whose phone number showed up on the store's caller ID. During questioning, he admitted to making the threats and violent statements. Goldwitzer was initially charged with one felony count of falsely reporting an explosive or incendiary device, and was soon released from jail after posting bond. The charge was later reduced to second-degree harassment. Goldwitzer is far from the only person to be accused of threatening to blow up a public place. In early 2023, 41-year-old Els Venter Branch vowed to blow up and shoot up a McDonald's in Alton, Illinois. He has since been indicted for a terrorism charge, along with one count of aggravated battery. In June of 2022, 61-year-old James Rummel was arrested on suspicion of threatening to blow up the world-renowned Tropicana Casino in Las Vegas after refusing to pay his restaurant tab. According to reports, Rummel told a hostess that he actually owned the restaurant and threatened to kill any security guards or officers who confronted him over the dinner fee. He was nevertheless taken into custody and charged with one felony count of making terroristic threats. 10. Gary Kuhn. In 2015, when 55-year-old Gary Kuhn tried to order breakfast outside of the normal breakfast hours at a Burger King in Manchester, Connecticut, he reportedly became extremely upset. He entered the fast food joint at 10:55 a.m., 25 minutes after breakfast was over, and was told that it wasn't possible to fulfill his order. Kuhn asked the employee at the counter if they had ever watched the 1993 movie Falling Down, starring Michael Douglas. He then explained that there's a scene in the film where a character shoots up a fast food joint for refusing to serve breakfast, although that's not really an accurate description of what goes on in the movie. The disgruntled customer finished his thoughts by saying, "That's what I feel like doing," then threw a coupon at the employee and left. He apparently wasn't interested in the lunch menu. Some people would have brushed Kuhn's words off as frustrated ramblings, but you can never be too careful these days. The police soon got involved, and Kuhn was charged with first-degree threatening and second-degree breach of peace. He was unarmed when he was taken into custody and said that he really just wanted a sandwich because he was hungry. But his choice in words landed him in more trouble than he ever could have bargained for. Kuhn was later released and told to return to court at a later date. Would you prefer to stay safe than sorry and report Mr. Kuhn if you were in the employee's shoes that day? Or was this something you wouldn't have taken very seriously? Let us know in the comments below. 9. Jelena Stewart and Dominique Ezel. In one of the latest fast food drama installments to make American news headlines, 2 suspects stand accused of attacking and injuring employees at a Wendys in Toledo, Ohio, after not getting cheese on their chicken sandwich. Officers responded to the scene around noon one day in 2023 and learned from multiple witnesses that an angry drive-thru customer had come inside the restaurant in a fit of rage over the simple mistake. According to a police report, the woman barged in with her child in tow, grabbed 2 milkshakes, and chucked them at employees before hurling other objects in their direction, knocking down a cookie display and injuring a pregnant bystander in the process. She was soon joined by a man who was seen leaving her car and entering the restaurant, where he also allegedly threw items at several workers, including the cheeseless sandwich that set off the suspect's tempers to start with. One of the flying objects reportedly struck and damaged a computer. While employees focused on getting the couple to leave, bystanders snapped pictures of the suspects, their car, and their license plate. Witnesses accused the female suspect of grabbing a worker by the hair, pulling her down to the floor, and trying to make off with her cell phone. Luckily, another worker got the phone back before the suspects left, and the worker was left with only a few minor injuries. A few days after the incident, authorities arrested 33-year-old Jelena Stewart on suspicion of robbery with a specification of attempting to inflict or threaten harm on another person, and one count of having a loaded gun on the grounds of a detention facility. 32-year-old Dominique Ezel faces a robbery charge as well. 8. Milton Ray Davis. As a restaurant manager, Mike Merkel was used to dealing with upset customers. So he didn't think much of it at first when he got an angry call from a customer in 2018 while working at a Domino's in Guthrie, Oklahoma. The customer, later identified as Milton Ray Davis, was mad because he received the wrong delivery order. Merkel told local news station KFOR that he offered to remake Davis's pizza, but was instead targeted with continued anger. He accused Davis of being belligerent before he actually showed up to the store with the improperly prepared pizza. According to Merkel's account, Davis slammed the pizza on the counter and immediately started yelling. In an attempt to calm the customer down, Merkel gave him a refund. But there were limits to how far the manager was willing to go to calm the situation. And when Davis demanded extra money to cover a $25 tip he claimed he gave to the delivery driver, Merkel flat out said no to his face. At that point, Davis lost what little control he had left over his temper and stormed behind the counter, where he put Merkel in a headlock. Thankfully, he let go after a few seconds, but continued shouting. Right when it seemed as if Davis was finally leaving the store, he turned around and headed back with his hands up, as if to challenge Merkel to a fight. Merkel told KFOR that he had dealt with angry customers, but this was the first time someone physically assaulted him. He said he stayed calm throughout the incident because, in his words, "Dude, come on, it's just pizza, man." Davis eventually left the restaurant and was tracked down by police. He allegedly admitted to his behavior toward Merkel, but pleaded not guilty to any assault charge. While Davis seemed to care deeply about the situation at hand, Merkel didn't see what the big deal was, saying, "Some people get mad over the stupidest things." 7. Pantsless customer smashes restaurant windows. As a New York City restaurant owner, 49-year-old Jenny Shih has seen her fair share of eccentric and bizarre situations. But when a regular customer showed up at her business, 4 choices and a soup, wearing no pants or underwear one day in 2022, members of her staff told the man to get out. It wasn't Shih's first experience with a problematic man who had a habit of urinating in front of the restaurant and coming inside the business without clothes on. And because Jenny and her staff were aware that the man struggled with mental health issues, they were as patient as they possibly could be when he came in. In most cases, they served him as quickly as possible to avoid any trouble. But there were obviously some situations that the employees couldn't sit by and ignore. So they had kicked the man out of the restaurant multiple times in the past. It seemed like a normal day when they sent him away for once again not being properly dressed in a public place. Later that afternoon, the man came back, this time wearing pants and armed with a hammer. He smashed the storefront's windows and doors. He left behind piles of glass and a huge mess for the workers, but was quickly arrested in connection to the incident. She told the New York Post that in 18 years of business, nothing like this had ever happened before, and that she suspected the customer was off his meds. She explained that a lot of the time, the customer acted normal. Instead of harboring anger toward the man for his destructive tendencies, she said that she hoped he got the help he desperately needed, and that she would rather see him get treatment than be thrown in jail. Would you have an easier time forgiving someone for destroying your property if you suspected they were mentally ill? Or would it be hard for you to look past the person's actions regardless of what was happening in their mind? Let us know in the comments below. 6. Naked and disruptive customers. A Texas man became disruptive and unpredictable after allegedly dipping his cigarette into PCP one night back in 2023. Police crossed paths with the suspect after getting reports about a man running around naked outside a Whataburger in Bryan late at night. Just as callers described, he was wearing nothing except his birthday suit. Identified as 40-year-old Eric McIntosh, the man admitted to his drug use, which explained his bizarre behavior. He was charged with 1 count of disorderly conduct by exposure and 1 count of possession of a controlled substance. Criminal charges are a big deal in any situation, but at the end of the day, the embarrassment of this ordeal most likely trumped any legal consequences McIntosh had to suffer through. It's apparently not as uncommon as one might think for people to show up naked in public. In early 2016, a woman named Jennifer Mary Nicholson was accused of standing up in the middle of a crowded Waffle House in Marietta, Georgia, and taking her clothes off. She then allegedly punched another woman in the face and started randomly hurling plates at customers. In another case that happened in 2019, a Florida woman whose behavior was equally as bizarre as her name caused a scene at a Waffle House in Pensacola. Freedom Rider Zobrist was asked to leave the restaurant earlier that night because of unruly behavior. She returned later on and allegedly threatened to shoot the manager and everyone else in the restaurant, before finally going outside, dropping her pants, and dancing around the parking lot. 5. Rachel Lee Sherman. In April 2022, after enduring a work shift from hell at a Little Caesars in Enid, Oklahoma one evening, a young man went to a police station and reported a disturbing encounter he had with an angry customer earlier that day. According to records, Chris Beard was working at the restaurant after school when a woman, who was later identified as 71-year-old Rachel Lee Sherman, pulled up to the drive-thru and ordered 2 pizzas and some crazy bread. Beard told the woman that the restaurant was out of crazy bread for the day. And while many people realize that problems like these are not actually the fault of underpaid teenage employees, others don't hesitate to direct their anger at counterworkers who have no control over a restaurant's food supply. This woman fell into this category and evolved into a racist meltdown that was captured on camera, and soon earned her a reputation as a viral Karen. According to a police report, Sherman asked Beard if he wanted a diploma and repeatedly called him racial slurs. She then asked the teenager if her words were hurting his feelings. Beard replied no, which only seemed to upset the disgruntled customer even more. In addition to the hate-filled insults and commentary, Sherman was accused of getting out of her car, approaching the drive-thru window, and slapping Beard straight across the face twice. The heavily redacted report says that the restaurant manager confronted the suspect, who sped away from the scene laughing. Nobody called the police at first, but Beard was traumatized by the incident, according to a lawyer who represented the young man. After telling his parents what happened, he reported the incident, which investigators said they verified via surveillance and bystander footage. According to a charging affidavit, Sherman told an officer that she was just joking around with the kid, and that she teases everyone like that. She admitted to calling Beard a racial slur once, but denied saying it twice, despite being confronted with the video footage. Sherman was charged with malicious harassment based on race. Now, over a year later, the status of the case is unclear. 4. Paul Fracasso. It's easy to go from being hungry to being hangry when you haven't eaten in a while and your food seems to be taking forever. Most people just bite their tongue and wait, but a Papa John's customer in Draper, Utah, decided to take action one day in 2021 when he went to the restaurant and his pizza wasn't ready. The customer, later identified as 32-year-old Paul Fracasso, placed his order by a phone call, but the eatery was having a few issues with its ordering system that day. So it had failed to process the order before he and another man came to pick it up. In an attempt to accommodate the upset customers, an employee offered to put in a new order. But the situation was past the point of fixing, and the men allegedly started swearing at the 3 workers who were on duty that day. The police were quickly called, but by the time they arrived, the suspects had already left the scene. Later that night, someone fired between 5 and 6 shots into the restaurant's front window, causing shattered glass to strike one employee in the face while others ducked away for cover. Based on a witness description, police tracked down Fracasso and his friend in a nearby garage about 10 minutes after the shooting. Officers performed gun residue tests on the men, and Fracasso's came back positive. To no surprise, he was quickly charged with discharge of a firearm and aggravated assault. Just days later, a man went into a Little Caesars restaurant in Knoxville, Tennessee, and held employees at gunpoint after getting impatient over his food. After initially being told that his pizza would take only 10 more minutes to cook, 63-year-old Charles Doty Jr. left the restaurant. He returned shortly after with an AK-47 and allegedly demanded his order at gunpoint, along with some free breadsticks for his trouble. According to news reports, a woman who had already received her pizza offered to let Doty have hers instead. He reportedly ate the woman's pizza, then fled the scene and was later arrested on 4 counts of assault and 1 count of aggravated kidnapping. 3. Amanda Martinez. In November 2021, an employee at the Sol de Jalisco restaurant in Temple, Texas, took a phone complaint from a customer who said her soup was so hot that it melted the lid of the disposable container it was given to her in. The worker apologized to the woman and offered to give her a refund and a free meal, but it unfortunately wasn't enough. Later that day, the customer entered the restaurant and started yelling and cursing at a counter worker. In a TikTok that went viral, The employee explained that she warned the woman that she needed to either calm down or get out, or she would call the police. The restaurant's security camera was rolling as the suspect flung her hot soup into the worker's face. While the soup had cooled down a bit by then, it was still hot, according to the employee, who said that she was more bothered by the spices, which made her feel as if she was getting pepper sprayed. The customer, later identified as Amanda Martinez, was banned from the restaurant and charged with assault not long after. She pleaded no contest and received a deferred sentence of 15 months, which meant that as long as she stayed out of trouble and followed rules set by the court during that time period, she would avoid jail time. Martinez was also ordered to perform 6 days of work for the county in lieu of serving 6 days behind bars. During her sentencing hearing, she apologized to the victim for her actions, which she was not required to do, suggesting that her remorse was genuine and that she actually felt bad. 2. Jason Morrison. Clark Kelman was doing some routine maintenance at one of the laundromats he owned in Durango, Colorado in March 2023, when he noticed a customer leaving. He thanked the man for his business, but was met with anger from the patron, who was upset over the laundromat's recent change in ownership and felt as though the machines were taking longer than usual. Kelman later told the Durango Herald that he offered the man a refund, but the customer continued to make berating remarks while he walked outside. Determined to make the situation right, Kelman followed the man and once again offered a refund. He approached the customer's van, saying that there was no need to be so upset, and tried to talk to him civilly. When it became clear that the man was not open to reason, Kelman went behind the van to snap a photo of the license plate, just in case any future incidents happened. In a shocking act of violence that was captured on video, the customer threw the van in reverse and stepped on the gas, pinning Kelman against the side of the building. The business owner suffered a broken arm and a dislocated wrist. Based on security footage and the van's license plate, police identified the suspect as 51-year-old Jason Morrison. Authorities issued a felony arrest warrant for first-degree assault, but were still looking for Morrison, according to recent updates on the case. It's unclear whether they tracked him down or if he's still at large. If you've worked in customer service, then you probably know better than anyone that there's simply no pleasing some people. Have you ever gone out of your way to fix a customer's complaint, only to realize that nothing you said or did would be enough for them? Tell us about it in the comments below. 1. Vernie Dickens. The thought of waiting for a bad haircut to grow out can feel like an eternity, but even in the worst situations, most people do little more than leave a bad review warning others about their experience. Every now and then, though, a disappointed customer takes things to the next level. A Kansas City barber learned this the hard way in 2022, when a man who was unhappy with his haircut tried to resolve his grievances with physical violence. According to court documents, 33-year-old Vernie O. Dickens wasn't charged at all after he complained about his new hairdo. When he returned to the barbershop the next day in hopes of getting his hair fixed, the barber who served him the previous day wasn't there. Another barber who was working told Dickens to just take a seat and wait. Dickens erupted with rage at this, prompting the barber to threaten to call the police. But before that could happen, the suspect allegedly pulled a gun out and fired 2 shots at the barber, before chasing the victim out into the parking lot. Seeing that the barber was in danger, a vigilant bystander rushed to his car to grab his own handgun. He later claimed that when he rounded the corner of the building, he found Dickens holding the barber up at gunpoint. The witness's attempts to reason with the suspect failed, as Dickens allegedly pulled the trigger. Luckily, the weapon malfunctioned, causing the clip to fall down to the ground, and the quick-thinking witness tackled Dickens. He managed to disarm the suspect and continued to restrain him until police got there. The victim was shot in the back, but survived his injuries. He told police that Dickens was standing over him and was about to kill him when the gun malfunctioned and the bystander helped. Dickens was charged with first-degree assault, unlawful weapon use, and 2 counts of criminal action. If convicted of the unlawful weapon charge, he could face up to 30 years in prison, not counting the 15 years each for the other 3 charges. Thanks for watching. What's been your worst customer experience, whether you were a worker or the customer yourself? Let us know in the comments below.